In an unexpected and deeply emotional moment, Hollywood legend Denzel Washington broke down in tears during a live television appearance, after receiving a surprise call from the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. What was said during that call left the audience, and millions watching around the world, completely stunned. It was supposed to be a typical late-night talk show appearance. The audience roared as Denzel stepped onto the stage, calm, dignified, charismatic as ever. The host welcomed him with jokes, played a few clips from his latest role, and the crowd laughed along. But beneath Denzel's warm smile was something quieter, a certain stillness in his eyes, like part of his heart was elsewhere. Halfway through the show, the host leaned forward with a grin. "We've got a little surprise for you tonight, Denzel. A live call from someone very far away." Denzel raised an eyebrow. What kind of surprise? The screen behind him lit up. A flag appeared. The flag of Burkina Faso. Confused, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then a voice came through the speakers, deep, calm, and full of gentle authority. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso." Denzel froze. For the first time in the show's history, the entire room fell silent. You could hear nothing, not even the hum of the lights, just one man holding his breath. No one could have predicted what came next. The president's voice carried a warmth that pierced through the airwaves. "You don't know me, Mr. Washington," he began, "but when I was 14, I was just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso. I saw you in glory. I saw a black man, not begging, not afraid, but standing tall and crying for justice." Denzel blinked rapidly, his hands beginning to tremble. "That night," the president continued, "I told my mother, one day I'll fight for people too, like him." The host sat stunned. Denzel covered his mouth. "Years later, when my people needed someone to stand, I remembered your strength, your eyes, your fire. I stood, not because I was fearless, but because I had seen what courage looked like. In you." Denzel slowly lowered his hand, eyes red with tears. "You're telling me I helped shape a president?" he asked, voice barely above, a whisper. "No, sir," Ibrahim replied. "You helped shape a man who refused to kneel to injustice." A single tear ran down Denzel's cheek. "Thank you, my brother," he said. The crowd gasped softly, but what came next stunned even the host. Ibrahim continued, his voice unwavering. "Today, I speak not just as a president, but as a man who owes a debt. And in Burkina Faso, when someone saves your soul, we do not forget." Denzel shook his head, overwhelmed. "Please, I didn't." The president gently interrupted. "Mr. Washington, I am officially inviting you to be honored in Ouagadougou, but more than that, I would like to name a leadership school after you, a place where our children can learn to stand tall, just as I did from watching you." The room gasped. The host for once was speechless. Denzel's voice cracked. "Mr. President, I don't deserve that." Traoré smiled softly. "That's exactly why you do." The call ended. And right there, on national television, in front of millions, Denzel Washington buried his face in his hands and sobbed, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming truth that sometimes a single life can echo across oceans, across generations. But this was only the beginning. Within 24 hours, Denzel was quietly packing his bags. Burkina Faso was calling. This wasn't for a movie. It wasn't for a red carpet. It was for something divine. No entourage, no spotlight. Just him, a small backpack, and a heart full of emotion he couldn't quite explain. As the plane took off, he looked out the window and whispered, "I don't know what I'm walking into, but I know I have to go." Back in Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood by a palace window, watching the distant runway. An aide asked, "Should we prepare the press?" The president shook his head. No cameras, no speeches, just truth. Something profound was about to unfold, and neither man knew they would both cry again, this time together. When Denzel's flight landed, there were no reporters, no red carpet, just dust and quiet. A single black SUV waited on the tarmac, and standing beside it, dressed simply, no military medals, was President Ibrahim Traoré. Denzel stepped off the plane. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They embraced, not as a celebrity and a head of state, but as two men whose lives had quietly, powerfully collided. "I'm honored you came," Ibrahim said. Denzel smiled gently. "I didn't come as a star. I came as a brother." The SUV drove them down winding, dusty roads. But what lay ahead was not a destination. It was a moment the world would never forget. The SUV drove past weathered neighborhoods and bustling markets, down winding roads lined with barefoot children who waved as the car passed. No one knew who was inside. They arrived at a modest home, its walls made of sun-worn clay and its roof patched with tin. "This was my home," President Traoré said quietly. He opened the door. No guards, no luxury. Just silence, woven mats, and the soft presence of the past. On the wall hung faded photographs. Then Traoré handed Denzel a wrinkled picture. In it, a small boy clung to the hand of an older woman. "She raised me," he said. "When my parents worked late into the night, she fed me, bathed me, told me stories about strength. Then, almost in a whisper, and she's still alive." They drove for another hour along winding village roads. No one spoke much. Denzel stared at the photo. The woman's wide smile, gentle eyes, and the kind of strength only time could give. "Where is she now?" Denzel asked. Traoré's jaw tightened. "She still works, cleaning classrooms in a rural school." "At 85? Denzel turned, stunned. Traoré nodded. "She never asked for help. She once told me, 'God gave me legs. I'll use them until he takes them.'" When they arrived, the school was worn but alive. Children ran barefoot, drawing in the dust with sticks, laughter echoing between cracked walls. And then she came into view, bent slightly with age, but proud, holding a broom. The same woman from the photo, Mama Hawa. Denzel stepped out of the car, frozen. Traoré walked toward her. She looked up. For a moment, her eyes welled with tears. "Ibrahim," she whispered. He rushed into her arms. "Mama Hawa." They wept. Then Denzel approached. She looked at him, eyes widening. Her hand reached out, trembling. You're him," she said, touching his face gently. In one quiet courtyard of Burkina Faso, time stood still. 3 souls, 3 stories, 1 sacred moment. They sat beneath the shade of an old baobab tree near the school. Mama Hawa between them, her back bent, her hands rough, but her voice warm as ever. She told stories of young Ibrahim, how he cried in her arms on cold nights, how he once gave her his only slice of mango so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened with a softness rarely seen in his eyes. Then Mama Hawa reached into the pocket of her faded apron. "I kept this all these years," she said. She unfolded a yellowed slip of paper, its edges worn. In a child's handwriting it read, "One day I will be a leader, and I will find you, Mama. I promise." Ibrahim gasped. He remembered writing it, age 9 on her birthday, after she gave him her only piece of bread. Denzel wiped a tear. "She held on to hope," he whispered. "That's the most powerful kind of faith." Suddenly, a barefoot child ran up laughing, holding a cracked plastic ball. "Mama, will you play?" And she did, still barefoot, still smiling. But something inside Denzel shifted. He was no longer just visiting. He had found something sacred. That evening, Denzel and Traoré returned to the palace. The mood was different, quieter, full. Then Traoré stood. "I want to show you something. Something I've never shown anyone outside my family." He led Denzel through a private corridor. Stone walls, soft footsteps, no guards. At the end stood a heavy wooden door. Traoré unlocked it. Inside, a dim room lined with shelves of books, hand-drawn maps, journals. At the center, a large framed photo of young Ibrahim and Mama Hawa, both laughing. "This," Traoré said, "is my real treasure room." Denzel was speechless. Traoré opened an old notebook. Inside, handwritten pages filled with dreams for Burkina Faso. All of this started with her, he said. I'm here because she believed I was worth something, even when I had nothing. Denzel touched the page, his voice low. You lead like a son who remembers love. Traoré nodded. And I want the world to know. Leadership isn't about power, it's about gratitude. The room fell still. Two great men. One mission, to honor the woman who shaped a president. Denzel had an idea, and it would change everything. At dawn, Denzel sat on the terrace of the palace, watching the sun rise over Ouagadougou. Mama Hawa's laugh, her face, her strength. It all replayed in his heart. Ibrahim joined him, quietly. I had a thought, Denzel said, sipping his tea. Let's give her the honor she never asked for. Traoré smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. That afternoon, without alerting the press, they returned to the village school with a small team. Children gathered. Teachers stood, in silence. Mama Hawa looked confused. What's happening? She asked. Traoré knelt before her and opened a small velvet box. Inside, a golden medallion, engraved with her name and the national seal. For your service to this nation, as a mother, a teacher, and a guardian of hope, he said, voice trembling. The children clapped. The teachers cried. Then Denzel stepped forward, holding an envelope. And from the world of cinema, he said, eyes glassy. I spoke with my producer this morning. Your story will become a film. And every cent will go toward building schools. In your name. Mama Hawa fell to her knees, sobbing. A woman who had spent her life giving was finally receiving. But the biggest surprise was still to come. 3 days later, Denzel Washington returned to Los Angeles for a live television interview on one of America's biggest talk shows. It was supposed to be lighthearted, red carpets, upcoming films. But the moment the cameras rolled, everything changed. There was laughter at first. Denzel smiled as the cameras rolled. But behind that smile, something in him had changed. The host leaned in playfully. So, Denzel, tell us about your trip to Africa. Denzel paused, then looked straight into the lens. Can I take a call? The host blinked, surprised. Live? Denzel nodded. The crew scrambled. Moments later, the screen behind him flickered to life. And there he was. President Ibrahim Traoré, live from Burkina Faso. The studio fell silent. Mr. Washington, Traoré said warmly. Your visit reminded us that kindness is not limited by borders. Then he added, You honored my people. Today, I want to honor someone you inspired. He turned to his side, and then she appeared. Mama Hawa, holding a phone, her eyes gleaming with pride and emotion. The audience gasped. Denzel's hand trembled. Traoré continued. You reminded the world that even those with the loudest voices must sometimes pause. To listen. Then, softly, Mama Hawa whispered, Thank you, my son. Denzel dropped his head and wept, openly, freely, on live television. So did the world. Within minutes, the clip went viral. It wasn't about movies anymore. It was about something much deeper. Twitter exploded. Mama Hawa, President of Hearts. Denzel breaks the silence. From Paris to Johannesburg, Tokyo to Atlanta, people posted photos of the women who raised them, who shaped them. An old picture of Traoré hugging Mama Hawa in her kitchen became an international symbol of love and legacy. CNN called it the most human thing ever caught on live TV. But what happened next, no one expected. A quiet GoFundMe page, created by a student from the village school, had a goal of $10,000. In 2 hours, it crossed $1 million. The world didn't just watch, they felt, and they acted. In a divided world, this story, of a mother's love, a boy's promise, and a man's tears, was bringing strangers together. But behind the headlines, Mama Hawa was fading. She had smiled for days, hugged dozens, spoken with presidents and movie stars. but her body was whispering. It was time. On the 6th day of this unforgettable week, she made one final request. A private moment. No cameras, no microphones, just Denzel, Ibrahim, and her. In a quiet room in her village, she lay under a thin sheet, light pouring in through bamboo slats. "I'm old," she said gently, her voice faint but steady. "I won't see the next planting season." Both men shook their heads, begged her to rest, to stay strong. She smiled softly. "I have no fear. My only wish is that no child in Burkina Faso ever goes to school hungry." A tear rolled down Traoré's cheek. She reached for Denzel's hand. "You tell stories that matter. The world listens to you. Tell this story." Then, from under her pillow, she pulled a small worn scarf. Faded, torn, hand-stitched with care. "He used to tie this around my arm when he played president," she whispered, placing it in Traoré's hands. "My first medal." She looked at both men, her final words clear. "Take care of each other." And then she closed her eyes. As the sun rose outside her window, her legacy rose with it. President Ibrahim Traoré stood still beside her bed, holding the scarf like a sacred heirloom. The room smelled of shea butter and old books. Denzel knelt at her feet, head bowed, shoulders shaking. Then, quietly, Traoré spoke. "She gave me everything when I had nothing. And now, I must give everything back." He turned to Denzel and held up the scarf, not as cloth, but as a royal emblem. "We will build something in her name. A school, a garden, a future." Denzel looked up, eyes red and swollen. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, we will. I'll help." Outside, the villagers had gathered. Somehow, they knew. Traoré stepped out, holding the scarf high. "Mama has gone to rest," he said, "but her spirit will feed generations." The crowd erupted in tears. In less than 12 hours, the world knew. Burkina Faso declared a national day of mourning. During a press conference that night, President Traoré made another vow. "Every child in Burkina Faso will know her name." And Denzel? He quietly canceled all upcoming appearances. "I've played kings and generals," he told his team, "but today I serve a mother." The next morning, the sun rose gently over Burkina Faso. A simple wooden casket sat in the center of the village square. No red carpets, no golden statues, just flowers, drums, and silence. President Traoré walked behind the casket alone, carrying one thing: the scarf. Denzel followed, his suit wrinkled from sleep, his face heavy with grief. They did not speak. They didn't need to. Messages poured in from world leaders, celebrities, and citizens. But what touched hearts the most was this. A small boy from Niger had walked barefoot for 2 days to bring a letter. It read, "Thank you for raising our president." As the casket was lowered into the earth, the village sang. Children wept. Elders held their hearts. A single bird circled overhead, as if carrying her soul toward the sky. A small bird landed on the edge of Mama Hawa's grave and didn't move. Then something happened no one expected. Denzel stepped forward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple necklace. His father's. "She reminds me of him," he whispered. "Strong, quiet, and never asked for anything." He knelt down and gently placed it on the grave. "Goodbye, Mama." Even the cameras lowered. Some moments are too sacred to film. That night, President Ibrahim Traoré and Denzel Washington sat under the stars on a straw mat, firelight flickering quietly between them. No speeches, no noise. They had just buried the woman who shaped both of their lives. One with her hands, the other with her spirit. After a long silence, Traoré spoke. "Denzel, this week, I remembered who I am." Denzel nodded. "Me too." And in the stillness of that African night, they made a pact, not written in ink, but sealed in pain, gratitude, and hope. Within hours, plans began for the Mama Hawa Foundation, a joint initiative to provide food, education, and emotional support to children in rural Burkina Faso and beyond. Denzel pledged his entire salary from his next film to fund the foundation. But the most powerful moment wasn't financial. It came in the form of a simple 60-second video Denzel released before flying home. Facing the camera, raw and unguarded, he said, "If one woman in a small village can raise a future president and change the heart of a Hollywood actor, then what are we waiting for?" The video hit 100 million views in 24 hours. The world watched and held its breath. 3 days after the funeral, Denzel returned to the U.S. quietly. No press, no paparazzi, just silence. But a long-scheduled live interview had already been promoted across national networks. Reluctantly, he agreed, on one condition. "Let me speak from my heart. No script." The studio was bright, the audience eager. They expected light banter, maybe a laugh or two. But when the host asked, "Denzel, you've traveled the world. What's one moment that changed your soul?" Denzel didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out the scarf. The studio fell still. He leaned into the microphone. "President Ibrahim Traoré called me, and I couldn't breathe. He reminded me that greatness isn't in awards. It's in mothers who wash your wounds, and in presidents who never forget them." The host looked confused. What did he say exactly? Denzel took out his phone and tapped play. The studio speakers carried Ibrahim's voice. "Thank you for honoring a woman the world forgot, but who made a man the world now remembers." Denzel broke down, live on air. The world stopped. Dinner tables paused. Newsrooms fell silent. Social media froze. The clip of Denzel, sobbing and clutching the scarf as Traoré's voice played, became the most shared video of the year. Comments poured in. "I've never cried this hard over someone I never met. This made me call my mom. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? The world needs more leaders like him." Across Africa, stories of forgotten mothers surfaced. In America, youth groups held candlelight vigils in honor of Mama Hawa. But in Burkina Faso, something more unexpected happened. Children in villages began writing letters. Not to Santa, not to movie stars, but to President Traoré. One letter read, "If I work hard like you, will I make my mother proud too?" Denzel stayed quiet after the interview, until the next morning, when he posted a photo to Instagram, a single tree in Burkina Faso. No caption, except, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." No hashtags, no promotions, just truth. Exactly 1 week after the surprise call, a statue was quietly unveiled in Ouagadougou. It wasn't of a king, not a general, not a president. It was a woman, holding a child's hand, a familiar scarf draped around her arm. The bronze plaque beneath it read, "To Mama Hawa, the mother of all leaders." President Traoré stood before it, candle in hand. Denzel stood beside him. They said nothing, because some endings are too sacred for words. That night, the wind brushed gently through the capital. Villagers said they could feel Mama Hawa's spirit on their cheeks, like a soft hand from the beyond. Back in Hollywood, Denzel made one final gesture. He announced a new scholarship, the Hawa Fund, in partnership with the Burkina Faso government. Dedicated to girls from rural Africa who dream of leading. As the press rushed for quotes, he said only this: "Some phone calls change your schedule. This one changed my soul. Dear viewer, if this story moved you, if it made you cry, think or remember someone you love. Like to honor the power of love." Comment: I believe in love and leadership. Share this with someone who needs hope today. Let's remind the world that greatness isn't about fame, it's about heart, because one kind act can echo across generations. Thank you for watching.